discovery, all these things. How do you show that gratitude? So then he says, that was all about Tawheed and establishing proofs for the existence of Allah. That's why we got off onto that. And then he said, and also to refute the different types of kuffar, because there are. And يَتَفَاوَتَ النَّاسُ بِالْكُفْرِ. People, there are people that are very decent, good people, and some of them are not actually, there's a difference of opinion in our scholars between the Maturidi and the Ash'ari. Is kufr a state? Is it a hal? Or is it a permanent reality? And the Maturidi say that it's a state, so that you can go in and out. Whereas the Ash'ari say no, it's a permanent. You're either kafir or mu'min. And that's why it's known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some of them say, you can say, Ana mu'minun insha'Allah. I'm a believer insha'Allah, because you don't know if your seal is with Allah. So the Ash'ari say that you can do that istithna. The Maturidi say you can't. I got it right, didn't I? Is the other way around? Yeah, I always forget that. Thank you, Sheikh. The Maturidi say that you can say, no, it's Ash'ari say inshallah. Ana mu'minun inshallah. Isn't it? That's how I know it. Is that how you know it? We got some mutakallimun. You defer? These are all people, we get these mixed up. But because if you say I'm mu'minun inshallah, it's about the khatimah. You're hoping that your khatimah with Allah is in iman. But the Maturidi say no. If you're a mu'min now, you have to have jazm. So you have to say I'm mu'minun, and that's it. Now, it's a significant debate, because what it means is that you cannot call anybody a kafir. If you're Ash'ari, they have a legal status of kufr, but you don't know if they're kafir. Which is one of the reasons why when the Sahaba, if you notice, they don't call people kafir by name. And this is why our ulama say you can't make ta'yeen of kufr. You can't say to somebody, you're a kafir, by name, because you don't know what their state is with Allah. Like Imam al-Qurtubi said about Omar, that Omar was beloved of God, and he was in Mecca bowing to idols. Because that wasn't Omar. Omar is the caliph and the second closest companion to the Messenger of Allah. So when he was in his state of kufr, he was not a kafir. He had the legal status of a kafir, but his reality was a mu'min. It just hadn't been manifest yet. And that's why the Sahaba will say, Ya adu Allah, or Ya adu wa nafsika, O enemy of God, because you can be in a state of even a believer can have adawa. You see, because that's something that can end. Adawa tuzad, and some animosity can end. And the same is true for mahabba can move to adawa, adawa can move to mahabba. So that's a khilaf amongst them. So there are differences amongst the people that go under the category of kuffar and the ahzab. The Quran has the people that yu'adi, a'da, and then the Quran has the people that don't, la yu'adi, right? And then the Quran has the people that their inward and their outward are different, like the munafiqun. The Quran has the people that are mu'min, but they're concealing their iman, like the rajul mu'min min ali Fir'aun, who was concealing his faith. He was a believer, but the people of Fir'aun thought that he was on their millah. So you'll have people here that you don't even know. I'll give you one example of this. I was in Washington, and I met this man, and he was in an American embassy, the consul in an American embassy. And just, regular Christian name, and and we started talking, and I was getting a sense, that this person was a person that a friend of mine had told me that he was a Muslim. And I just said to him, I said, "Are you Muslim?" And when I said that, he went back like this. And then he said, yes. And then he said, but I don't like to tell people that because I'm not a very good Muslim. So you could just assume that guy was a kafir, like a lot of Muslims do. But he's actually, a believer. Believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you don't know. Those are the realities. And that's why Imam al-Sawi, in his commentary on the Jawhara, puts the people into 4 categories. The Baqarah puts them into 3 categories. But he adds that 4th category because he said it's in that, the mu'min from Ali Fir'aun. So he said there's mu'minun 'inda Allah, a believer with God and a believer with people. Like everybody here, inshallah. And then mu'minun with Allah, mu'minun with people, and a kafir with Allah, which is a munafiq. And then kafir with Allah and kafir with people. And then mu'minun with Allah and kafir with people. Like in the famous hadith of the woman they were all calling an adulterer. Right? And the woman said, Allahumma la tad'ani mithluhu, don't make me like him. And the baby said, make me like them, because they were a righteous person that had been falsely accused. So sometimes outward appearances, in fact often outward appearances are very different from reality. So then he says, and then it also refutes those, and then he says every sect, and this is very important for people to get this. If this is all you get, it's been very useful for you. Every sect uses the Quran to support their madhab. Every sect uses the Quran to support their madhab. And it will refute those who disagree with it and claim that they're the ones that are going against the Quran. So how do you know who's the rightly guided people? Well, historically, you went with the majority of scholars. That's the mashhur, الذي كثر قائله. The ones that have the most of the ulama saying that is usually the best thing to follow. Not sometimes, because sometimes the mudaqqidun or the scholars of exceptional caliber might differ. But generally that's the principle. You go with the majority. And there are many hadiyat Allah ma'al jama'ah. The hand of God is with the group. So the majority of scholars tend to لا تجتمع أمتي على الضلالة. My ummah, and he means the scholars of his ummah, will not agree upon falsehood. So the ijma' of the ummah is what we follow. And then the next thing is the ittifaq, when you have the majority that go with it. So that's very important. And then he said, so knowledge of tafsir of Quran will help you to arrive at a realization of what's true and what's correct. That's why tafsir is so important. And tawfiq, providence and success is from Allah, and Allah is enough for me and the best of those who who help us and take on our cross. So, what time is it? Does anybody have any questions?
Who's the majority today?
Who's the majority of today? Well, I mean, this is a confusing time. I'm the first to admit that. I had one teacher, Sheikh Muhammad Mahmoud al-Zaidan, brilliant scholar, Usuli scholar, amazing faqih in Medina. I read Usul with him in the Prophet's Masjid. He died in Sajda, in Asr, in the Rawda. Allah yarhamu. His son Yahya studied in Mauritania also with me, with Murat al-Ham. But I asked him a question one time about, and he said, هذا العصر يحير العلماء فكيف بالعوام. He said, this is a time that bewilders the scholars. So what about the common people? So it's a difficult time. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ said towards the end of time things get more confusing. يُصْبِحَ الْحَلِيمُ حَيْرَانًا, that even normally patient, forbearing people become agitated. And so, I mean, what we try to adhere to is what has been dominant. You know, it's what I like to refer to as the plumb line. You know, you have a plumb line in engineering to keep something straight. The plumb line down. You have a plumb line of scholarship and tradition that's handed down from generation to generation. The Prophet ﷺ said, يَحْمَلُ هَذَا الْعِلْمِ مِنْ كُلِّ قَرْنٍ عُدُولُهُ ينفون عنه تحريف الغالين وانتحار المبطلين وتأويل الجاهلين. That this group of upright people will carry the religion into each generation, and they will refute the misquotations of the extremists, تحريف الغالين يحرف الكلم عن مواضعه, and the انتحار المبطلين and the plagiarisms of the nullifiers, people that are trying to nullify it, with تأويل الجاهلين, and the interpretations of the ignorant people. So there always has to be those people that refute these things. Now, my own personal, and this is, I believe, for instance, that the Amman Accord, which is agreed that eight groups should not be called kafir. You know, I signed on to that, and I believe that. You know, I don't believe in making takfir of the Shia, the Ithna Ashariya and the Zaydiyya. That is an alternative narrative, and it has. If you study it, you can understand how it arose. It's not the narrative of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but it's a narrative that has basis in history, and there are many factual statements. The real difference is it's about husn al-dhan. I mean, in the end of the day, that's the real difference between the Sunni and Shia, is that we know some really terrible things happened to the family of the Prophet. If you want to read Muqatil al-Talibiyin, you know, the deaths of the family of Ali ibn Abi Talib by Abu Faraj ibn al-Jawzi, you know, you can see what happened. It's horrible. And the Bani Umayyah did a horrific thing. They were cursing Sayyidina Ali on the minbar. I mean, really, it's amazing. They were cursing Sayyidina Ali on the minbar. And Umar ibn Abdul Aziz stopped that. And Imam al-Nasa'i was basically killed because they asked him in a masjid if he knew any hadith about Muawiyah, and the only one he knew was one that wasn't very flattering from Muawiyah, and these people beat him to death, basically. I mean, Imam al-Nasa'i, talking about one of the greatest muhaddithin in the history of Islam. So don't think things are all, like Imam Zayd said, you know, when you read Islamic history, you have to take a lot of Iman vitamins before you read it. You know, a lot of our tradition has redactions and rosy-colored views of reality, but it just didn't happen like a lot of people think. You know, if you read the fitna, you'll become convinced that this one Jewish convert to Islam created all the fitnas in the Muslim Ummah. It's a total fabrication. It's just all mythology. But unfortunately, this is what happened. And so there's a lot of problems. But they're an alternative narrative, and we disagree with them, but there's no reason to say that they're out of Islam. Simple as that. And there's no reason why we can't live peacefully and coexist, because historically in many places we have. I mean, I've been going to Al-Ahsa for 12 years, every year, for Ramadan, to do the Eid in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia. You know, they say I have to go because if I don't come, they don't know it's Eid. So they'll keep fasting until I come. They just make a joke. It's Saudi generosity. But in that city, half the city is Shia, and the other half have all four madhabs. To this day in Saudi Arabia. And they're the Shia ulama, you know, they're there, and they greet the Sunni ulama greet them. They're separate, they live separately, but they don't fight, they don't have any problems. Their mosques, the Shia mosques are there, they're protected, and vice versa. So there's no reason why we can't live. And the same is true. The Zaydis are really Ahl Sunnah. Their view is historically, there are many people that held that view. I mean, so the Zaydis, it's not what the Sunnis agreed upon later, but at the time, Imam Malik, there was a riwayah that said he stopped at Sayyidina Umar and didn't make tafdeel of Umar, of Ali and Uthman. He just left it at that. And then there's a riwayah that he said Fatima is the best over everybody. He said, "La ufaddilu an al-bid'a ahada." You know, I don't prefer anybody over the portion. The Prophet ﷺ said that Aisha was bid'atun minni. She was a piece of me. He said, I don't prefer anybody over a piece of the Messenger of Allah. And that's a riwayah. So the tradition is vast. And then you have the Ibadiyya, which emerged out of the Khawarij. And they're a valid school there. They live in Oman. And they're not, we have our differences, but they're there. And the same is true for the four imams that we follow as Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. We believe in the four imams and their methodologies. So anyway, we should just try to unite the Ummah as best we can. And my point is that I also recognize the Athariya school. I think it's, it's there, it's part of the tradition, the Hanbali school that inclines towards completely non-speculative theology. I mean, they're there. Ibn Abdul Barr was anti-Ash'ari, and nobody can say he wasn't a great imam. So I don't, I benefit from him. I read his books, but when I read in what he said about the Ash'aris, I remember going to Sheikh Bayya bin Sa'id, one of my teachers in the Emirates, because I was reading a book by Ibn Abdul Barr, and I was like, look what he says here. And he said, yeah, subhanAllah, it's amazing. He just didn't really comment on it. He just said, people have their opinions. He's entitled to his opinion. If once you reach a certain level of knowledge, the Ummah gives you a lot of room to say what you believe, and tends to respect you in that. I mean, Ibn Taymiyyah is a very controversial figure in Islamic history. Simple as that. But to just throw him out and discard him and say he's of no benefit, which is one extreme, and then the other extreme is whatever he said is true. Those are both extremes. And the balanced position is to look at what our ulama have said that the majority have agreed upon or rightly guided, and their criticism should have to be heeded. Because if they're not, it's very dangerous. If you read the book Tawassul wal Wasila by Ibn Taymiyyah, you'll end up considering a lot of the Ummah mushrikun, and they're not. So it can be very dangerous to take those types of positions. And Ibn Taymiyyah, at the end of his life, according to his student Imam al-Dhahabi, if you read in Sir A'lam al-Nubala, which is a famous book of biographical literature, he says in that book, under Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, who was the mutakallim, the theologian, he said that Abu al-Hasan used to say, لا نكفر أحدا من الأمة إنما هي ألفاظ نختلف في تأويلها. We don't make takfir of anybody from this ummah. These are semantic differences that we have about interpretations. And then Imam Dhahabi, تعليقا عليه, commenting on that, he says, وَكَذَلِكَ كَانَ شَيْخُنَا Ibn Taymiyyah في آخر حياته. And that's the way our teacher Ibn Taymiyyah was at the end of his life. So you have to be careful. You're taking him when he was a young man and zealous and making takfir of this, that, and the other. And then at the end of his life, according to his own student, he said that he didn't make takfir of people. He abandoned takfir. Because takfir is very dangerous. And if you're going to make takfir of somebody, you better know that one of you is kafir. According to the Sahih Hadith. If man kafara mu'minan faba'a ahaduma bil kufri. Or man kafara musliman faba'a ahaduhuma bil kufri. Whoever calls another Muslim a kafir, one of them is kafir. In other words, if the person you're calling a kafir is not a kafir, you're a kafir for calling him a kafir. And in Maharam al-Lisan, the rules of the tongue, Imam al-Musawi says that one of the things that if somebody calls you a zani, like a fornicator or a sadiq, you can't say bal anta sadiq, you're a thief. You can't return it. You have to say you're a liar. You can't say, but if they call you a kafir, you can say, no, you're the kafir. And Ahmad ibn Hanbal says, لا نكفر إلا من كفرنا. We only make takfir of those who make takfir of us. So people make takfir of other people very easily. This is a dangerous thing to do. وَمُدْخِلُ أَلْفًا مِنَ الْمَلَاحِدَةِ أَقْرَبُ مِنْ مُخْرِجِ نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. Abu Hanifa said to mistakenly consider 1,000 people Muslim believers is easier with God than to call one believer a kafir. To think that 1,000 disbelievers are a believer is easier. It's better to make a mistake, err on the side of iman, not on the side of kufr. And Abu Hanifa's position, anybody that shows outward respect to the Prophet, you should consider them a Muslim. If they call the Prophet